Hey there, welcome to episode 62 of Social Business Engine, the podcast that showcases industry thought leaders who represent modern business in action, getting results through the culture and technology of social. I'm your host, Bernie Borges of Find and Convert. Hey, thanks for tuning in today. Get ready to meet Christina Jaramillo. Christina is a LinkedIn marketing expert. You know, some people label themselves as experts, but Christina is recognized by the New York Times and Forbes as an expert in the area of using LinkedIn for business results. Christina has been published by notable websites such as Entrepreneur.com, Marketing Profs, and Social Media Examiner. Christina runs a popular consultancy appropriately called Get LinkedIn Help. And on this episode, Christina and I will discuss the relationship between the LinkedIn Sales Navigator and social selling best practices, and why one without the other is like ham without eggs or like peanut butter without jelly. Hey, this episode is sponsored by Cision. We've partnered with Cision to publish Social Business Journal Volume 2, a how-to guide in influencer relations. Visit socialbusinessengine.com/Cision to download this journal and up your influencer marketing game in 2015. And now let's get to my conversation with Christina Jaramillo. Christina, welcome to the Social Business Engine podcast.
Hi, Bernie. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, Christina, let's begin with, first, what is LinkedIn Sales Navigator and why should sales and marketing teams consider investing in it?
Well, LinkedIn Sales Navigator is a new functionality, a premium version, I guess you would say, that LinkedIn has rolled out for sales and marketing teams. It gives you more of a reach, and it opens all those third connections that you can't necessarily see, so that you can see a bigger picture. And the reason I think people should use it is because LinkedIn is steadily restricting their functionality for the free version, as I'm sure people have noticed. So you're getting this limited view of prospects and targeted companies. But Navigator basically opens up those doors so that you can see who you should be connecting with, who you should be engaging with, and it helps you with buyer identification and prospect research. So it's a great tool on that end. And it also gives you some real-time alerts for engagement opportunities. But I want people to remember that reach without engagement means nothing. No matter what anybody else tells you social media-wise, Navigator is just the tool.
Right.
So it helps you it also helps you get these targeted news feeds, which I like because you can kind of spin off things that might be happening in an industry or might be happening with a particular company. So, for example, you know, everyone's familiar with all the outages we've been having with the retail and airline industry, and we kind of capitalized on that with one of our IT clients because we were able to talk about that and how tech leaders could avoid this with new technologies and keep this kind of outage situation from happening again. It's been happening for the last couple of years, and it continues to happen. You'll see it in the news all the time. So that's one way to use it. But you have to remember it's not just a prospecting tool. You can be an account management tool because, again, you can see what's happening with key decision makers in your targeted accounts. And I also encourage people to kind of integrate it with their other CRM tools, whether they're using Salesforce, anything like that, so you can focus on your key prospects. It'll give you that customized lead suggestion.
Okay, so LinkedIn Sales Navigator is a pretty robust tool just from this little 2-minute description that you gave. And I want to actually take you back to my introduction. You know, my hey there, welcome to this episode. I talk about how I interview industry thought leaders like yourself, Christina, who represent modern business in action, getting results through the culture and technology of social. So this is a technology component. But you wrote an article on LinkedIn. You published an article on LinkedIn in early May that's titled LinkedIn Sales Navigator is not enough for most B2B sales and marketing teams. And that's what brought us here together to record this episode, because that really got my attention. I really like the main point that you make in that. And I want to really kind of start with in that you talk about how too many organizations are relying solely on LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and they think that it's just a tool that, in and of itself, is going to lead to more sales and revenue. So, why do you think that that way of thinking is wrong?
Well, I want to give an example. I actually heard this from one of my colleagues. He told me that one of the world's largest software companies, not going to name names to protect the guilty, said LinkedIn Sales Navigator and the training that LinkedIn Sales Navigator provides was their social selling strategy. So basically, they were rolling it out to their sales team, sales and marketing team, and saying, "Have at it, have fun."
Right.
But it's just a tool. So all the lead suggestions and insights that it's going to give you is not going to help you if you don't have the right messages or the right content or the right approach to enable sales to use LinkedIn and to use this tool. So I like to tell people they should have a customer development strategy or process so that they can have tie revenue to this whole all their work on LinkedIn.
Okay. So one of the things you talk about in this article is the people. You know, that of course we all know we need the right people, but can you expound on what you mean by that? Getting the right people as part of the kind of the puzzle to the social selling strategy.
Sure. I actually talk about this in my article. I'm a big fan of, and I kind of addicted to The Profit on CNBC with Marcus Lemonis. I'm not sure how many people are actually familiar with that. But he basically turns over struggling businesses, and he focuses on three areas: the people, the product, and the process. And I kind of use that similar strategy to on LinkedIn. But I also incorporate product. I also make it a solution value as well. So I focus the people and the product, which includes the positioning and the messaging of the product, and also the process or the strategy. But when I say people, I don't mean having the right people as part of your social media program. That's basic, marketing. Everyone knows that in marketing. But I mean having defined roles in the social selling program to create sales enablement environment. So your prospects are easily transitioned through the different phases of the sales and buying cycle. So many times I've seen organizations that their sales and marketing leaders assume prospects are going to view their product the same way and have the same consensus and see the value that it offers. But that's not always the case. And the last piece of that puzzle would be strategy. So that's the big difference that I've seen in many B2B sales and marketing teams that drive demand and enjoy consistent sales leads and revenue. And then the other ones that are just have a presence, have a lot of connections, but aren't actually getting anywhere. And unfortunately, I've seen this all too often that people think they have a strategy, but when it comes down to it, they're just doing like a shopping list or have a shopping list of tactics. And that's why most sales and marketing leaders
And I also
actually
I see campaigns confused with strategies as well. So
Yep.
I want to come back to something you said that gets my attention a little bit, and I want to unpack it a little bit because I think it's worthwhile. You made the comment that you really want to define roles so that from a sales enablement standpoint, you can have prospects easily transition through the different phases of the buying cycle that they go through. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, okay. I want to actually give an example for the best to elaborate on this.
Okay.
I've seen technology sales teams that are using LinkedIn to research prospects and make connections and generate opportunities, but they're actually jumping to phone calls and demos right away. So they're basically using the same tactics that they would on the phone or cold calling right on LinkedIn, and it's not going to work. You have to take a different approach. But they're seeing results with that old school approach, so they're continuing to do it. But they're using the blanket messages. They're spending time trying to develop a lead. Instead of spending time trying to develop a lead, to schedule a call. So that's happening on the sales side, but on the marketing side, teams are focusing on brand maintenance and generic updates, personal profiles, company pages, maybe joining some groups and posting comments on discussions. But I've seen research from LinkedIn tell us that majority of companies are just in brand maintenance mode. So both sales and marketing are using LinkedIn, but not to its full potential. They're not working together, basically working side by side, just not together.
Mm-hmm. And so then to create that sales enablement that you speak of, where prospects get transitioned I don't know whether it's easily or seamlessly or efficiently through the different phases of the buying cycle. Is that really about helping the buyer see the product in the way that you want them to see it? Is that what you mean by that?
Um, I think it's more about educating so that they see the value that you have, not necessarily changing and the way that making them think the way you think about the product. I think it's more about educating it to see that they need it, or
Hmm.
that they need your solution, or they have a problem or challenge that can be fixed with your offering.
Okay. And then how do you do that on LinkedIn when you've got to have people that you're connecting with? There's only so many ways that you can engage with people on LinkedIn. I know that I'm on the receiving end of messages and emails and even connection requests where they personalize it, which is a good thing, except they ruin it by saying, "Hey, I want to connect with you because here's what I want to sell you." And not literally, but essentially that's what they're saying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, unfortunately, it's really hard. I think people have to say that they want to share or exchange strategies or learn from each other, and just so you have to figure out what it is that you can offer to the other person without sounding um, so forward and just trying to sell them within the first 5 seconds. I mean, they don't know you most of the time when you're sending them an invitation to connect, so why would they want to buy from you within that first 5 seconds of reading an invite to connect?
Hmm. So, Christina, what I really hear you saying is that LinkedIn Sales Navigator is a valuable tool, but in the context of people, process, and technology, it's just one of the three cogs in the wheel.
Correct.
Okay. All right, cool. All right, well, there's a lot more that I want to cover on this, but before we get to the next topic on LinkedIn Sales Navigator and best practices, let me just cover a brief message from our sponsor, Cision. Cision is a widely recognized leader in public relations software, and we are excited to partner with Cision in Volume 2 of the Social Business Journal. In this how to guide in influencer marketing, you'll discover a 3-step process from Cision on how to develop an influencer relations program. And you'll hear from 21 business experts on everything from what an ideal influencer looks like to the secret sauce of penetrating the sphere of an influencer. These business experts deliver bite sized insights that give you actionable takeaways for your influencer relations strategy. So get your copy of Social Business Journal, Volume 2. Just go to socialbusinessengine.com/Cision, and that's spelled Cision. So, Christina, let's talk about what do you mean that most sales and marketing leaders are falling into this trap of thinking that LinkedIn is really just a tactical thing instead of something that's strategic?
Well, I go back to what we were talking about a little bit there. Marketing is basically, or actually both sales and marketing, are going through the motions. They're not thinking 2 to 3 steps ahead. So they're, accepting connections, making connections, maybe joining a group or two, um, posting updates, liking things, which drive me crazy because I'm not really sure what that's supposed to mean. And saying great post, which doesn't really add any more value to the conversation.
Right.
Um, but I think what people have to think about is what action do you want um, to happen, or what outcome do you want from the action or activity you're doing or taking place with on LinkedIn. So if you're inviting someone to connect, what do you want them to do? Do you want them to accept the connection? Do you want them to go to visit a blog? Or even if you're posting an update, do you want someone to download a white paper? Do you want them to just visit your blog? What is it that you want the final outcome to be? And I think it'll make it a lot easier for you to um, do all these actions and have an actual strategy as opposed to going through the motions like I was talking about. Because I have some examples. People don't integrate LinkedIn with everything, with all their marketing. So we had a video marketing firm that came to us and they had hundreds of connections, but they weren't understanding why they weren't getting anywhere. And what we did was we re-engaged with their old clients that are some of their connections as well, and that client was able to re-engage with them, and they were able to have an opportunity come their way that was over $36,000 just because they re-engaged with people that were sitting there stagnant,
Dormant, yeah, just
dormant.
yeah,
Yes.
not engaging. So, in some respects, and I know that you might, fall off your chair when I say this, but in some respects, it's kind of like the phone sitting on your desk, and you have clients on the other end that have phones sitting on their desk, and you haven't called them in a while just to say hello. The difference is LinkedIn is a tool that isn't the phone, but it is nonetheless a tool, a way to reconnect with people that we haven't quote unquote spoken with or connected with in a while.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Now, also in this article that you published on LinkedIn about LinkedIn Sales Navigator and how it alone as a tool is not enough for B2B sales and marketing organizations, you've got this really cool visual, which I'm going to include this visual in the show notes page because I think it really helps to kind of tell the story that we're telling here today, Christina. And this visual it's kind of like a pizza pie. It's got 6 slices, and the slice at the very top starts with building thought leadership, and then it goes on to message testing and intelligent prospecting and lead generation and lead engagement, and then increasing social presence. So, are you suggesting that most organizations don't take this approach and should consider this approach? You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think most organizations do take the approach, but not necessarily all of the pieces of that so-called pizza pie, because I think they have a lot of things that are maybe empty that they could be filling in the gaps with. And I always tell people when they're figuring out their strategy to start at the basics, start with the LinkedIn presence. So first of all, your LinkedIn presence is not just your company page, it's more so, at least I've found, and in my experience, that it's your profile, because people are going to connect with you before they connect with an organization,
Mm-hmm.
unless a Fortune 500 company that has a huge marketing budget and they can see you everywhere. Um, but what I tell people is to make their profile case study driven, turn it into a marketing tool, not a cover letter resume type of thing. Don't make it so generic. No one cares really about your sales achievements. They want to know what you can do for them. So you want to provide value and build relationships with your LinkedIn profile. And
Mm-hmm.
then you can start going into the thought leadership, which it basically means don't think LinkedIn groups are a way to um, use just put your blog up or use it as a news feed. Don't just kind of post a link up there and expect people to go to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just a publishing platform to put the publishing platform is just another place to put your blogs. Don't copy and paste and stick it up there and push out content, basically. You
Mm-hmm.
want content that's going to pull people in. So that's the whole thought leadership. I know that gets thrown around, that phrase thought leadership, but I
Right.
think it's people need to take a different approach to it. And the whole message testing, it goes to a different variety of that, versions of that I use. Message testing for inviting people to connect, message testing for them to engage with you, whether it's joining a group, downloading a white paper, signing up for a webinar, visiting your blog, whatever it is that your goal is. You got to try different messages. You can't just do the blanketed message that people are doing
Mm-hmm.
and expect that it's going to work and then it's going to stick. And then we go into that intelligent prospecting, and this is where Navigator comes into play,
Mm-hmm.
because you can research people that are going to be key decision makers, influencers, people that are going to affect your business's bottom line, as opposed to, I'm sure a lot of people have these kind of connections, as opposed to these long shot hopefuls that are going to be maybe down the road they can introduce you to the key decision maker that holds the purse strings type of thing. And then another things that you were talking about, another aspect of this whole pie is the community building engagement strategy. So I think people need to take a step back and look at LinkedIn as a relationship building tool and not something that's, how many followers you have, how many connections you have. I mean, it's great to have 1,500 followers, but if only 5% of them are viable to your bottom line, then really what's the point?
So, can we talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah.
Relationship building tools. So, relationship building is not a new concept in the context of sales. It's been around forever.
Hmm.
But for a sales organization that is still early in the journey, usually their mindset, and I mean, you're the LinkedIn expert here, so please, I want your thoughts on this. But my experience, my exposure, Christina, is that usually the mindset is we want leads. So the whole idea of building relationships is sort of akin to, well, we want to build a brand awareness, and then some executive saying, well, awareness doesn't, ring the cash register. We need leads. We need sales. So how does relationship building fit into this whole sales enablement thinking?
Well, what I like to do is when I am working for myself or for my clients, I think the relationship building, you kind of get people into your community, and then once they've taken that next step, you know how we were talking about thinking 2 to 3 steps ahead,
Hmm.
they make that step and they join the community, then they know that you're interested. And then that's where sales can take over and kind of look into that group and see how do we want to go about reaching out to these people? Do we want to invite them to one of our webinars that's coming up? Do we have a white paper that might fit with them? What's the best way? Because we don't want to jump on, selling them right away. So this is something that takes time, and especially with organizations that have a complex or long buying cycle, that's something that they have to keep in mind, that someone's not going to just connect with you and then jump on a demo call and invest hundreds of thousands of dollars with you just because they accepted your connection on LinkedIn.
Right, right. And especially since, as you said, so many B2B organizations, sales organizations have a complex, lengthy sales cycle, which means that there's a lot of people involved in the process. And more than ever, people can be very anonymous. They can be very much in the background. They can be completely unknown to the salesperson who's working an account. So if Navigator is a tool that can give them that insight, coupled with that strategic prism that you speak of in your article, I can really see, Christina, how the two together, again, it's kind of like my peanut butter and jelly analogy, it's like the two together are going to give you more results than just one.
Yeah, and it also Navigator is great because it also opens you up to, you'll see who the people that your targets are connected to and what they're doing together, how active they are, and things like that. You can kind of get a little more idea of what's going on in the organization as well.
Okay. Have you seen any common characteristics among organizations in terms of ability to embrace this way of thinking, embrace this mindset? And by common, attributes, I'm thinking anything, whether it's industry, whether it's tenure, or length of time on social, just any attributes that you've observed, in the course of you delivering your LinkedIn services.
You know what? I've seen that a lot of people are kind of on the fence with social because they're not. They kind of assume LinkedIn is similar to Facebook, and they want to take the same kind of approach. And I have seen and I have found that every platform is different and has a different kind of methodology of navigating it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people get turned off with Facebook because, we tried it and we didn't get an ROI on it. But they're not actually putting these little processes in place and these strategies in place so that you can see at the end of the day what's working, what's not working, and what needs to be changed, because that's one of those things that we all know in marketing. We always have to constantly evolve, otherwise we're going to get left in the dust.
Right, right. So this leads me to, I think this is probably our final thought before we segue to my one thing question, and that is that for as long as I can remember, sales and marketing, or marketing and sales, depending on how you want to frame it up, have not necessarily always, worked well together. And so once again, we're in this conundrum because is LinkedIn, is using Sales Navigator a marketing strategy because it's social media, which typically is associated with marketing, or is it a sales strategy? And part B of my question, Christina, is, in your experience, do you see successful strategies implemented by organizations when it's purely a sales strategy, or purely a marketing strategy, or a hybrid and it's a sales and marketing strategy? I know it's a long-winded question, but
no, I know what you're
probably
saying.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I get it. I think you can do either just sales or just marketing, but I've seen the best results from my experience is when there is a hybrid. So marketing is working on getting that brand awareness there, getting that reach out there, and getting this community. I think the LinkedIn community is like crucial to if you want to integrate sales into this. So then you kind of have this little community, I guess I'm going to say again, of people that are interested in what your organization has to say, interested in your solutions that can fit their needs and their problems and fix everything that they, whatever challenges they're having. And then sales can kind of go in there and figure out, how we were talking about earlier, how we're going to approach these people, how are we going to reach out to them. So I think that the hybrid definitely does work best, and I know it's hard for sales and marketing to necessarily get along all the time, but I think for the common goal, it's very beneficial.
And have you seen in your experience where one takes the lead over the other, or is that just kind of a case-by-case thing?
I think marketing might be a little more prevalent, but then once sales kind of figures out that, especially with Navigator now, that they can kind of incorporate it with their other CRM tools, I think they're getting more on board now. So I think it might be 50-50, as we go on further with the Navigator and we start to use it more and more people become aware of it.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you that from our experience as an agency that more often than not, it is marketing that is coming to the table with the desire to integrate a marketing strategy with a sales strategy. So something like LinkedIn Sales Navigator. But again, case by case, it's easier said than done, and there's not always a very cohesive conversation that happens around it. So it is an ongoing challenge for sure.
It's like siblings. That's what I like to relate it to.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Okay, well, Christina, it is time to segue to my one thing question. And this is where I ask you, if there's any one thing that you could change about the way that business is conducted today, what would that be?
Well, since I'm a LinkedIn geek, I guess you would call it, I would say that one of my biggest pet peeves and one of my things that people do all the time, especially really experienced C-level executives, is giving that generic message and not customizing it. And to take it one step further, customizing it to a mutually beneficial relationship, as opposed to let's get on a demo call, let's get on a sales call, buy my product, in your face blatant sales. So that's one of the things, especially if people are navigating LinkedIn, is I still receive them all the time, the generic messages, and I thought we had moved past it, but apparently not. So that's what I would change.
Yeah, well, we've not moved past that because I get those all the time. And I'm with you on that 100%. I always personalize it, which is one reason, by the way, Christina, that I've learned this lesson the hard way. I never send an invitation to connect on LinkedIn through their mobile app at the time of this recording. So this might change in the future, and I hope that it will. LinkedIn's mobile app does not give you the ability to customize or personalize the invitation like the desktop app does. And again, I hope that changes. And when we're recording this podcast, that was the case. So anybody who's listening to this, if you're using the mobile app, depending on when you're listening to this episode and whether or not LinkedIn has changed it, just know that you cannot personalize. So the receiver is just getting one of those vanilla default, I want to connect with you on LinkedIn or whatever. So, well, Christina, thank you so much for joining me here today to share your insights on LinkedIn Sales Navigator and the importance of integrating it with other social selling best practices. Before we sign off, or I segue to my little outro here, let's let people know, where can people learn more about you and your services and connect with you online?
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. And I encourage people to actually invite me to connect on LinkedIn.
And personalize it.
Yes, personalize it, please.
I heard you on the Social Business Engine podcast with Bernie.
Exactly. That's all it'll take, really.
Yeah.
You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Go to my website, Get LinkedIn Help. Those are the best ways to getlinkedinhelp.com. Those are the best ways to reach out to me.
Terrific. And we will have a link, no pun intended, in our show notes page to your article that you published on LinkedIn titled, LinkedIn Sales Navigator is not enough for most B2B sales and marketing teams. So, Christina, thank you once again for joining me here today. And again, I'll have all those links in our show notes page. Before we sign off here today, I do want to remind everybody that they can get their digital copy of Social Business Journal Volume 2 a how-to guide in influencer marketing that we produced in cooperation with Cision. Just go to socialbusinessengine.com/Cision. There's also a link to it on our homepage. And while you're there on our homepage, remember to visit our video channel where you can catch video interviews with other inspiring business professionals that are succeeding in modern business through the culture and technology of social. And if you enjoy this podcast, even a little tiny bit, would you write a review of it in iTunes? I would really appreciate that. Reviews in iTunes are super important. It helps other people even just learn that this podcast exists. It's kind of like SEO juice in iTunes. So I would really appreciate that. And we've made this easy. We've got a page on our website that's socialbusinessengine.com/iTunes. And of course, it links directly to the podcast. Until next time, this is Bernie Borges of Find and Convert wishing you continued success on your social business journey.